Bono and the Edge walk into a bar. The bartender looks at him and says, "Oh, not you two again."
Oh, you told. Well, wait a minute. You told that one on the Patreon podcast. So yeah, it's good. It's good again.
All right.
Thank you, Pete. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Today is January 20th, 2019. Our guest today is Susan Brackney. Hey, Susan. How's it going?
Hello. It's well, thanks.
All right. We'll come back to her in a second. Let's start with Rick and introduce ourselves. I'm Mike. Or start with me, then Rick. Mike Davis, Lovecraft eZine. Honestly, not sure what I do, but Rick, go ahead.
Rick Lay, writer.
Pete.
Pete Rawlick. I have been doing laundry since noon, and I've only gotten through socks.
And you killed the chickens that crossed the street to die in the rain.
I
and
did.
you're cooking them.
I did.
Okay. Matt.
Matt Carpenter, dilettante and raconteur.
Okay. Ben.
Ben Handelman, chess.com moderator.
Yes, you are. And Ben and I have played a couple of games on chess, and I will not say that I'm as good as Ben is. We'll find out more in the future. I will say, though, he didn't catch me at my best, and I lost those two games. But, I mean, it was like watching a football game. There should have been a soundtrack for these games. It was so tense.
Mike,
we were calling each other names and everything.
Mike,
yeah.
Playing strip chess over the internet is really a problem, and you got to fix it. I'm just saying.
If I was going to play strip chess with somebody, it would not be Ben. Okay. Susan Brackney is the author of, I think, several books, but this one, The Lost Soul Companion, I think was your first book, Susan. And it's a book of comfort and constructive advice for black sheep, square pegs, struggling artists, and other free spirits. And how I came across this book was I was feeling down many years ago one day. It was a Sunday, and my wife said, "Let's go to the half-price bookstore." And I said, "Okay." So we did. We were browsing around, and she found this book and brought it to me. And I liked it, and I brought it home and read it, and it did very much help. I mean, there's nothing that's a silver bullet, but when you read this book, you kind of get this big sense of, I'm not alone with this depression thing and this creativity thing. What hooked me was the first couple of paragraphs. Who are the lost souls? I remember, this is Susan's writing now. I remember riding around at night with my parents in our little blue Volkswagen Rabbit. I was just a little girl, and I loved looking into the windows of people's houses as we drove by. Winter was an especially good time for this because the leaves were off the trees and families gathered indoors much earlier than usual. I would glimpse people eating dinner or washing their dishes or relaxing in front of the TV. And sometimes I could even see what they were watching, but only for a second. And then it was on to the next house. A whole neighborhood at 30 miles an hour looked something like dinner, television, dinner, dark, dishes, dinner, dark, dark, dark. These night drives reinforced my feeling of not belonging anywhere, a feeling I didn't really mind. So yeah, and when I read those first few paragraphs, I was like, well, I got to buy this book. So thanks, Susan.
Oh, thank you. I had hoped that I would be able to help at least one person out in the world to feel a little bit better. And I think, hey, then that's a win. If I helped you in the bargain bin of half-price books, that's fantastic.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be one of my questions. What was your goal in writing the book? And you really sacrificed to write this book. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well,
I mean, all writers put their energy into books and everything, but I just thought what you told me was worth reading.
Yeah, well, I originally self-published the book, and actually I dug it out. If you want to see, this is the original cover.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I guess to
Listening later, it's a black cover with a light bulb on it.
yes, it's very dark looking. It's supposed to kind of be like the cover was supposed to sort of attract people who would, you know, it would resonate with them. It's kind of dark, it's kind of a little creepy, but maybe kind of friendly at the same time, like quirky, all those things. Basically, this is a book that didn't exist, that I needed badly. And I looked everywhere. I didn't set out to write a book. At first, I just looked and looked and looked. I thought, well, surely someone's taking care of this. But I didn't find what I needed. And then it occurred to me, you know, there might be someone out there who needs this even more than I do. And then I decided I might have some kind of moral obligation to write this. I also had learned the story of John Kennedy Toole, which maybe we can go into later, but he was a frustrated writer. He had a lot of things going on. His story was quite tragic, and I just was very sad about that and how it turned out for him. I just wanted to be able to support people like that and people like me. So I saved half my income for a year, which I'd made $14,000 a year back then working at a newspaper. And I worked full time. I would get home, learn about self-publishing and work on the actual book until like midnight. And then the next day I would get up at 5 and do it all over again for a whole year.
Yeah. In addition, this was in what, 97 or so? Something like that.
Very early before.
Yeah, before it was easy to self-publish a book.
Yeah. I mean, I knew about printing, but I had to learn about, you know, I had to join the Uniform Code Council, Product Code Council, and I had to get an ISBN, and I had to write to all these different people and get permissions to use photos and snippets of text. And I mean, it was an education, but I was very driven to do it. And it worked out in a way. I did self-publish, and I was happy with the product. And I sent one copy along with a letter to one agent, just one. I sort of researched all the agents and decided, well, there's one out there that's just whacked enough who she might understand my project. Because I never even pitched this to traditional publishers to begin with, because I didn't think they'd understand. I thought, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to wait on that. So, yeah. But the agent wrote me back and was jazzed about it, and it got picked up. It got re-released. So, it eventually ended up not in a good place, but that's a different story too.
I like what you said about having a moral obligation to write it, as well as, you know, feeling that way. I love that, and I'm glad you did write it. You know, and also the fact that throughout all this work, you just kept thinking, if I only help one person, it'll have been worth it. Which you did. I think you've helped a lot more than one. So, you know, and I should say, I think people who have been listening to this show a long time probably don't need an explanation. But if you're kind of new to this show, you might think, okay, what's a horror podcast doing with a guest that writes a book called The Lost Soul Companion? You know, it's not a horror book. You know, it's just that a lot of writers and creators do listen to this show and/or watch this show, and you know, creativity and depression oftentimes, and many times, go hand in hand. Pete, you said something about that a little bit before we started. Do you want to repeat that?
No.
Okay.
But I will. But well, I know from personal experience, writing is a very difficult process, and it comes with several what I think of as emotional plateaus that you reach Like, oh, I finished a chapter, great, you know, and you just keep going on, and you just keep getting higher and higher and higher, and finally you're like, hey, the book is done. I'm finished with it. But you're not. There's still more work to do. So you've got to get it. You got to do the beta read. You got to do the edits. You got to do art. You got to do line edits. There's all this other stuff that has to get done. And those little things just start eating away at all those great emotional plateaus that you reach. And then finally, you know, it's published.
Right.
And for one day, you're like, hey, my book is out. And then the next day, you're like, everybody's, you know, it's not the next day. It's next week. Your editor or your editors are like emailing going, so what else have you got?
What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
Not last
And
week.
you're like, I just spent 2 years putting out a book.
Yeah, those folks don't always understand. You have to let your creative tank refill. And some people write or do artwork or whatever their creative thing is as a means of coping. Some people, when they're feeling okay, they don't really do a lot in the way of creative stuff, and that's fine. And then when they're not doing well, sometimes writing or artwork or whatever their thing is the only thing that gives them any comfort at all.
And I agree with that. And I think that there are some people, you know, and there are some writers in our own community that use it as part of the process. They finish something and they hit that lull period where they're not producing anything. And the world is against them and nothing's working. And they're like, oh, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to write anymore. And then things sort of recharge and they fill up that tank you're talking about with new ideas. And suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I'm back. Mm-hmm. And I'm working on a project and everything is fine. And they're good for 2 more years until, you know, they go through it again.
Yeah. And like I said, this isn't the fun geek stuff that we usually talk about, and we will talk about that in a little bit. But I do think it's important to talk about, you know, so many creators suffer from this. I'm looking at the little white book. That's what my wife bought me. Anthony Storr, in his essay, The Darkness That Has Brought Humanity Light, writes, many of the most valuable human beings who have ever lived have shown clear evidence of recurrent depression. What matters is that those who exhibit this liability should be able to use it productively, which is no mean feat, because as you say further down in this paragraph, sometimes it's just really hard to get out of bed when you're hugely depressed. You know, and people that are lucky enough not to suffer from depression don't necessarily understand that. But again, as you said here, getting started is the key.
Well, yeah, and honestly, it's easier for me to do things for other people than it is for myself. And so that's one of the things that made writing my very first book possible. If I had just only been trying to work on it for myself, I don't know that I would have had the fire in the belly to really do everything, because that was that was not a lot of sleeping and a whole lot of coffee for a long time. And I don't know that I could have done that just for me. Even now, my whole career is pretty much a workaround for mental illness. I'm a freelance writer full time, and my editors don't know how the sausage is made. They just get my work at the end, and it works. They don't know if I cried in the shower that morning or if I had to take a nap in the middle of the day. I just meet my deadlines, and that's all they need to know. But I don't think that at this point I could hold down a regular 9 to 5 anymore. So I found a workaround. It's not an easy workaround, but it's okay. It's working.
Yeah.
As far as folks with depression, whether it's, you know, really super serious, I mean, mine is treatment-resistant depression, which is the most interesting flavor there is, I think. But for folks who just, they could be bipolar, there's all kinds of things you could be. I do think in a way it's a gift, because I think on the other side of that coin, you have a lot of empathy and a lot of imagination. And I think that's one of the things that you can tap into to be creative. Not all creative people are have something going on, but a lot of the people who have something going on are creative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, in what you just said, in our video test, you said something very similar about, you've been given a gift, and you said something like, I believe, both a terrible gift and a wonderful gift at the same time.
Yeah, it's a horrible, wonderful thing. It definitely has flavored me in a really bad way, but also, in some good ways too.
Yeah.
So
I should probably throw this disclaimer out there. I don't know if it's necessary, but I'll do it anyway. None of us are doctors or anything like that. We're just regular creators who are giving our thoughts on depression. And, Susan has a lot to... Oh, sorry, Matt, you're a doctor. I always forget because you're always on time. Nobody got that joke. Okay. Pete got it.
Got it. I got it. I just can't believe you went there. And actually, if you recall, he was late to the podcast, the Patreon podcast the other night.
Oh, that is true. He was late. Yes, you are a doctor, Matt. None of us are doctors except for Matt, and I don't think he's a psychiatrist or psychologist. I know he isn't.
I'm a lab technician.
Okay. Well, anyway, I don't want to talk about meds here really, but for a lot of depressed people, medication is a very important part of this. It's kind of when you're treating depression, a lot of times you need two things. You need the proper medication and you need the proper therapy, let's say, whether you're finding it yourself or, getting it from someone else. So yeah.
I'm only going to make one kind of medical comment here because it's really not my place, but it's like, for me, the most important thing is recognizing that it's happening. And the easiest way to recognize that it's happening is if I'm suspicious, I ask. And I don't ask around. I mean, you have to be direct, and people are not dishonest, and they often want help. It's like, are you depressed? That's like, I ask, are you depressed? Are you feeling blue? Do you have crying jags? Are you having trouble sleeping? And I go through a various degree of symptoms when I'm with somebody, because most of my patients, with their diagnosis, they are depressed. And then to take that further, if I'm worried, I ask them, are you thinking about committing suicide? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? And then if they do, I say, do you have a plan? Do you have a weapon in the house? What are you going to do? Because they're not dishonest about this. So as uncomfortable as you may be, to try and get someone help, you kind of have to know. So the point is that a direct question works better than trying to mysteriously read someone's thoughts, because we all know how well that works. I just wanted to share that.
No, thanks.
And if you don't mind if I add something. So I personally primarily deal with PTSD, and depression is more of a symptom for me than the actual root issue. But depression's depression. And I found what Matt is saying here about making sure you're asking is very true, because when I was first diagnosed with these symptoms, I'd been out of the military for 10 years. I had no idea I had PTSD because I didn't know what the symptoms were. And it was my odd behavior that people were saying, like, why are you acting like this? Why are you doing this? You haven't slept in 5 days. What's wrong with you? It took other people to point out, because when it's yourself, you just don't, you either don't think of things that way, or you're disgusted with yourself because you're acting out of sorts and you think you somehow deserve to be sick or ill. And so I just want to emphasize, it really is important that even if you think you're not important, especially if you have family, just talk to a doctor and try to get help. It's something wonderful to help you creatively, but it's also important that You see a therapist. You do what you need to do to get healthy.
What you just said about the part about blaming yourself sometimes, you know, you can get depressed about the fact that you're depressed, you know, and think these kinds of thoughts like, why am I so weak and everything, when that has nothing to do with it.
And I would add on to that, way more people are dealing with this issue than most realize, because when you're depressed, you put on a mask and you go out in public and you do the things you think you need to do. And you go home and you sit in a dark corner by yourself, angry or upset or however it may be affecting you. And I think it's important to realize this is an issue for a huge amount of our population, and there's nothing wrong or embarrassing with getting help for it.
Right.
You know, one thing that's interesting, and maybe interesting isn't the right word, but there are people who are surrounded by other people and they're still very, very isolated feeling. They're still very alone. You can be in the middle of a crowd and it can be worse than normal. I mean, I can be in the middle of a crowd and feel completely isolated, which is odd because I'm in the middle of a crowd, but those are the times when I feel even more alien than normal. Hey, you know, maybe I do belong talking on this horror fiction kind of podcast because I am kind of an alien. You're talking to an alien. I don't ever really feel like I belong here. And you know, the other thought I had today was maybe the folks who are feeling out of sorts are just very attuned, and maybe it's the whole rest of the world that's kind of out of sorts, and we're just reacting to things that are a mess, and we're not feeling good because things are a mess. Maybe it's not us. Maybe it's just the world in general.
Yeah, when your empathy factor is cranked up, it can be really depressing. You know, I found myself in the middle of the night. You know, I'm sharing things here. I don't think I've ever shared it before, but I think it's appropriate. I found myself in the middle of the night thinking about what all those people went through in World War II. You know, the concentration camps, everything, you know, just because I saw a movie that, you know, was set in a World War II setting, or that alluded to it, I should say. And, you know, it's real easy to get attuned to the sorrow of others, past or present, or the things that are not right with the world. So you also talk, you talk about a lot of things in this little book, and I can't really recommend it enough. And there is a Kindle edition now too. I linked to it and the print in the show notes. But you talk about the precipice of success.
Yes.
And that can help you to get depressed real easily. Can you talk about, if you don't bear this in mind, can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny how when you're working on a project, you're a book, let's say you're writing a book, or a book is a really good, it's difficult, it's going to take a while, it's going to take a lot out of you. Especially in the beginning, you're like, what am I doing? Where is this going? Is anyone going to care? Is this going to succeed? And yeah, it's funny when you do manage to get it out and you're on the very tippy top of this sort of, I call it the precipice of success. So on the one hand, it's like, you know, if you roll down on the good side of things and you succeed, then you're on the Today Show or Oprah or something, and there's parades for you, or you're on the New York Times bestseller list, or who knows what. Things turn out great. But if it doesn't go anywhere, then you're on the other side and you just feel like a failure. Like, not only did you maybe manage to get this project out, but it fell flat on its face. And when
you don't mind me interrupting here just a quick second, what you said about if I can just help one person with this book, you know, I've read about this in a different way. You know, you were setting your rules for success for the book. You know, I'm going to feel successful if one person is helped.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that makes it a lot easier. I mean, that makes it a lot easier than if
Well,
you're.
and a lot of people set very unreasonable or unattainable success rules for themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, that's the other thing. If you're looking for external validation, well, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because that's kind of hard to come by. If you instead set some internal goals, like be happy that you wrote a book, be happy that you accomplished what you set out to accomplish. That's
Paul
pretty
Wilson,
cool.
an author that's pretty successful, was on our show last week, and really successful, I should say. And he talked about his advice for writers, and point number 2 was, don't be jealous of other writers. Don't look at them as your barometer for success, in other words.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you compare yourself to other people, that's one of those sort of outside validation things. Am I as good as so and so? I mean, gosh, I have to say I think that's why I don't write fiction. I've always wanted to write fiction. I have all kinds of ideas, but I think I've read too much good fiction, and I just feel, yeah, I'm comparing myself to all those people, and I'm saying I could never write anything as good as, George Orwell or Margaret Atwood or Richard Adams, so why even try? Well, what if those people had thought that? Then we wouldn't have their stuff. So I guess at some point I better try. I'm not there yet. Sometimes it takes a while to work your way up to a thing. But yeah, I do completely. I mean, I'm at fault for, as far as fiction goes, comparing myself to other writers all the time, and it makes me not even try. It's totally paralyzing.
The problem also is, like, look who you're comparing yourself to, Margaret Atwood. Oh
I know.
God. I don't even compare myself to her. It's like my neighbor down the street. I'll compare myself to her.
Well, I like to shoot for the moon,
Okay.
but settle for the couch. Shoot for the moon, but settle for the couch. I just made that up.
Is there anything that you would like to talk about that I don't really know to ask? Because you really went in depth in the book. It is not a it's not this book where you're going to get a lot of dry facts. It's not a dry book. It's an inspirational book, and it talks about, it talks about suicide, depression, creativity, and back when I got it, I thought, this is sort of this little island of, I'm not the only one who feels this way. The internet was pretty new back then. I couldn't get on a talk show and talk with like-minded people, like this. So.
Yeah, I often think things are better now with the internet on the one hand, because you can find a community, and that's what the Lost Soul Companion was meant to do in the beginning, was to try to sort of, if not make an overt community, then at least let people know. I kind of picture these very special, sparkly people, like even in your audience. I imagine you have lots and lots of people in their little boxes, separated from one another, and maybe some of them feel kind of isolated. Maybe some of them are pretty isolated, but I would hope that they know that I'm in my little box over here, and I'm isolated too. I'm getting by. I don't know them, but I'm thinking about them, and I'm wishing them well, and I hope that they know that they're in good company. We're in good company. We may not see each other or talk to each other, but I take comfort in knowing that the world is filled with, isolated people in their little boxes, but they think differently. They see things differently. They really care, almost so much that they can't be outside for a long time. It's a it's a curse and a blessing, and the world is a better place to have those people in it. So that was sort of the point of the Lost Soul Companion too, to let folks know, if you're one of these people, well, I'm thinking of you. I'm here for you in spirit, and you're not alone.
Yeah, you talked early in the book about what are birds tweeting about. But this was way before Twitter, by the way, which is funny. Can you just touch on that for a sec?
Yeah, well, birds, they use this thing called phatic communication. And essentially, well, I mean, they're saying a lot of other things, but basically they're saying, I'm here, where are you? And then another bird will answer, I'm over here, where are you? Back and forth, back and forth. And this little book was just me sort of perched on a branch, saying into the void, I'm here, where are you? So, and I would also say that it's not written like a regular book where you read it in a very linear way. I made it so that you can start anywhere. Pretty much they're little short sections. So if you don't have the energy to do the whole book, you can just literally open it anywhere and start reading and get a little something out of it, even though you didn't start at the beginning. I've always liked breaking rules, so.
In one chapter, in fact, you talk about, you touch on people who considered themselves failure after failure. You know, they failed and they failed and they failed. You know, people like Abraham Lincoln and so forth. I don't remember your examples, but they didn't stop. And what if they had stopped?
Yeah, I think maybe you only really fail if you completely give up on a thing. Yeah, I don't know. That may be kind of a cliche or a platitude, but it also seems true. I mean, if you stop working at a thing, you're not going to succeed at it, are you?
Yeah, that's number one, is to not give up. And then this, you know, number two is, if it's not that good, keep improving it until it is. You know, if you don't know how, find someone who does. You know?
Yeah, and I'm imagining there might be people in your audience, if they're not already writers, maybe they're thinking about it, but they have been too afraid to start, or they don't have the energy to start, or, you know, who knows what. But this is the other thing about writing a book. If you can write a sentence, you can write a book. You just have to write a sentence and then another and another and another, and try not to look ahead and don't look behind. Just keep your little horse blinders on and focus on the one page at a time. And, you know, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time. I think if I thought, oh my God, I have to write a whole book, I don't know how I'm going to do that. Well, I usually procrastinate. I have had a book deal or two in the past, and even though I maybe had a whole year to write it, I might wait till I only have 4 months left and then think, oh shit, I gotta get going on this. And then I finally start. So talk about eating an elephant. Now you got to eat it fast. So
I've never heard that phrase before.
Oh, well, yeah. One bite at a time. That's how you eat an elephant.
Okay. Well, first, let me just say that I have a lot of respect for how you wrote the book, you know, pre this modern age where you can, you know, 20 years ago, basically, 22, whatever, where it's so easy to self-publish these days. And that's a good thing, but there's a whole lot of junk out there too. But you did it all before that. But your reasons for doing it was to help other people. So, you know, I really respect that. You talk about later on in the book something that I think a lot about, which is, I don't know if you put it quite this way, you put it a more colorful way, but it's about having perspective. And the beginning of one of your sub chapters or whatever is, be thankful you're not in a Turkish prison. Will you talk about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm having a bad day, sometimes I try to take things to their worst possible. Well, it could be worse, this or this or this. I think about one of the things I thought about was there are people in other countries who are incarcerated, and things are really not good for them. They're lucky if a bug walks by, they can grab some extra protein. They're hungry, they're cold, they don't have any comforts, and they're out there. And so, when you sort of think in those terms, or there's somebody in a hospital who maybe they have Guillain-Barré syndrome or something, and they're totally locked into their body, or there's horrible things. When you start to think about, I know that's pretty dark, but when you start to think about folks who have things kind of worse, then you're able to at least say, okay, well, I feel horrible, and this little voice in my head keeps telling me to kill myself over and over again, but I'm upright. I'm warm enough. I have food. I that way you start to sort of think, okay, what do I have going for me? You may still feel horrible, but it's a start. So.
And it's about, you know what? I don't know that I'd find much to be thankful for if I was in a Turkish prison, but my family has gone through a lot lately. I deal with chronic illness and stuff. But I always think I do have these, I'm human. Everybody says, God, I wish this would stop. But, yeah, I do try to put it in perspective and think, well, we live in a nice place. We're not rich, but we pay all our bills, and, I get to do something I want every day for a living, and my wife loves her job, and there's so many things I could list, so.
Yeah, there have actually been studies about the value of expressing gratitude on mental wellness. It does seem to help. Even if you just try to think of a couple of things to be thankful for every day, and they might be tiny. In my case, often they, are related to, like, I saw an owl today. That might be a thing. That's a weird thing, but it's one of my things, so. Oh, I can't hear you. Where did you go?
No,
I'm sorry. I need to learn how to run the show. Sorry about that. A few of the things that we're talking about are cliches, like you said, but they're also cliches because they're true.
Yeah, I think so.
So,
well, while we're on the subject of being grateful, because I had to bow out in about a minute.
We're grateful for that.
We're grateful for that. So what I'm grateful for, Mike, is that, you over the years have put together a fabulous little community, and that community helps you, me, everybody in it, Matt, this other guy, Ben, we all appreciate what you've done. And what amazes me, Mike, is that you've done it under some really trying pressures. And that is, to me, is amazing. So there.
Oh.
And now that I've gotten all sappy, I gotta go. But
all right. I take it back. I am thankful that I'm not thankful that you're leaving. So, all right, man, have a good dinner, and thanks for what you said.
My name is Pete, but that's okay.
You got me flustered, so I didn't expect that. I appreciate it. Susan, what else can we talk about in the next, 5 or 10 minutes here that I, like I said, maybe don't know to ask that you think is important to get out to people with depression and creativity that are watching or listening to this?
Well, I don't know if people would be interested to know how and why the book ended up in Half Price Books.
Sure. That's where I found it.
Yeah, well, when I self-published, I was cruising right along, and then I sent this letter to an agent, and she accepted and got interest from a number of different publishers, and it actually went to auction. And by then I was already working on the sequel called The Not So Lost Soul Companion. And that one is for people who kind of have things a little more together and they're ready to do something kind of public with their creative work. So it has a lot about marketing and, you know, not letting trolls get you down and all that stuff. But I eventually went with a division of Random House to re-release both books, which was very exciting. And then the book came out on September 11th, 2001, which is really a bad day to have a book come out. It was just a bad day all the way around.
Holy cow.
So the other part of this is that the rights revert back to me 65 years after my death. So essentially the book died on that day. You know, publishers will kind of give something about 3 months of marketing effort and stuff before they go to some new shiny thing. If you didn't get to the top of the bestseller list by then, they're going to go on to whatever is after you. So that's kind of what happened here. And yeah, it's a bummer. I made this thing. I wanted to help lots of people. I wanted it to go places. And, you know, if I'd had a crystal ball, I just would have kept my little self-published version and people might still have it, you know. I'm actually going to try to contact them and see if they'll just give me the rights back because maybe they don't care. It would be great to be able to re-release this, like update it, because there's so many things I could mention now. That would be a really wonderful project that I would be so happy if I could do, because it was sad. It was like a death. But on the other hand, I have to remember that my original goal was to help one person. I met my goal.
Yeah, there really are some predatory lenders out there. I did link to this book in the show notes, but it also kind of, and I know I'm helping you meet your goal of helping more people, the more people that buy this, but at the same time, it kind of kills me to know that the royalties are going to someone that it shouldn't be going to. So, well,
there aren't royalties. The sales were so bad after that happened, you know, and they really didn't do much in the way of marketing. And so it just kind of, you know, if people don't know about it, they can't really.
Well, somebody's getting paid for those Kindle copies.
Well, maybe eventually, yeah, maybe they'll make their advance back. But, you know, until then, I don't know. I hope that it doesn't, you know, I guess print on demand is the saving grace. It's not just remaindered in a big trash barrel somewhere. And so that way, if people do need it, they can still access it, which is good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I am thankful that you wrote it. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. You do have a second book in this, a little sequel to this book, don't you?
Yeah, I do. It is The Not So Lost Soul Companion, More Hope, Strength, and Strategies for Artists and Artists at Heart. And yeah, like I said, it has a lot more. It's got stuff about the media and PR and marketing and just external versus internal validation and making sure that you can handle the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes with putting your work out there, because it's kind of like being naked in public. That's how I felt when I put this first book out. I felt like, oh my God, what did I just do? and I was really freaked out. But it turned, it was all right. I got used to being naked in public. So.
Well, I don't have an audience of millions or anything like that, but I do have a lot of people, relatively speaking, who watch the show and listen to the show later, via podcast. And so, yeah, my goal for today was to introduce you and have you talk about it, and maybe let a few more people that are like us know that they're not alone either. So hopefully that will happen. I'm sure it will.
I hope so. I hope they weren't bored or bummed out or anything. Sorry if you were bored or bummed out.
Yeah, no, you know what? It's really easy to not talk about depression because, it's a really serious subject. We only talk about, geek stuff and all that. But it is important. We do have a lot of creative people who listen to this show. So I wanted to do this.
And there's some of the very best people.
Yeah, I hope so.
Now, to kind of like segue, maybe transition. When I was looking, when I know who the guest is, I will often post a few pictures of them on the Facebook page for the eZine. And most of yours deal with beekeeping.
Yeah, I'm a beekeeper.
One of your other books is about beekeeping.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that hobby or how you came to it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I like doing things for myself. I like gardening and all that. And I knew honeybees were kind of having trouble out in the world. And I wanted to keep bees sort of because I knew they'd be great for my garden. And I also thought maybe I could help them out too. The equipment was really expensive. And I had just mentioned it to a friend that I've always wanted to do that. And he went to a garage sale, found everything that I would need for super cheap because the man was a beekeeper and he was marrying a lady who was allergic to bees. And so he got rid of all his equipment and gave up his beekeeping. My friend bought it and gave it to me in exchange for honey for life. So that's how I started. That's how I became a beekeeper. I'm pretty much self-taught, and I'm a master gardener and a master naturalist, and it just all kind of goes hand in hand. But that's kind of how I got started, and yeah, so.
That's a pretty cool hobby.
Yeah, I like it.
How many hives?
Well, sadly, I had to sell my hives and my chickens and my house when I got a divorce. So I right now don't have any, but I'm actually going to get some more this spring. So I'll be back in business. Okay,
now in terms of geek cred, Neil Gaiman has multiple beehives. And sometimes on his blog, he posts about the travails of beekeeping. And one of his least favorite things is during the winter, mice get into the bottoms of the hives. So if you're out there, you're an author, hey, beekeeping it's part of the culture.
Yeah. Neil Gaiman and Susan Brackney do it.
There you
Why
go.
don't you? Well, thank you very much, Susan, for writing the book. Thanks to my wife she's a great wife, and for finding this for me. I wouldn't have found it on my own because I was over in the horror section and sci-fi section. And thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, and I hope you enjoyed talking with us for a bit. So.
Indeed. Take
Okay.
care and good luck. Anyone out there who's struggling, just all good things. That's all.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. So now on to, I'll just say this before we segue into the geek stuff. Actually, this is a good segue because it is geek stuff. There's a very good episode of Doctor Who titled Vincent and the Doctor. And they go visit Vincent Van Gogh, and I won't give any of the plot away, but even if you don't watch Doctor Who, all you really have to know is he's a time-traveling agent, and he's a friend named Amy is traveling with him. So that's pretty much it. But he says something near the end of the episode that I really like. The Doctor says, "The way that I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things." You know, so see, Doctor Who did a depression thing too. The good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things or make them unimportant. So anyway, yeah.
Mike, I just wanted to add that there is a Lovecraftian themed novel which deals with this whole subject.
Really?
Colin Wilson wrote a book in the 60s called The Mind Parasites.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And basically it was that all, he was pointing out that all these great geniuses suffer from depression, like Van Gogh and so forth. And they're actually Lovecraftian aliens who are living on our pain, our psychic pain, and are causing all these depressions.
You've just invalidated the first hour of this show, damn it. Yeah, I remember that now. It's been years since I read that one. So did you guys see the new little teaser for Shazam? Got a very specific Man of Steel reference in there. Not reference, visual, you might say. Anyway, I don't know what to think of Shazam. You know, I guess after I see it, I'll know. I haven't had time to see Aquaman yet. Have you guys seen Aquaman?
Yeah.
Yep.
You'll enjoy it someday.
As we pointed out, it is Lovecraftian.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I keep forgetting about that.
You should say, I mean, I went out of my way. You know, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't enthusiastic to see it. I'm glad that I did, but I said, I better see it because I think we had hints that there would be a Lovecraftian angle to it.
Well, here's a headline for you from Comic Book News, comicbook.news. Okay, whatever. Here's the headline: Justice League DCEU is dead. This is in capitals, so it must be correct. I'm kidding. I know it is. The Justice League DCEU, as we know it, is officially dead. As the chairman of Warner Brothers Pictures Group, Toby, I can't pronounce your last name, comments on the DC movie plans moving forward, which does not involve creating a shared universe as being the main focal point. Quote, we've turned a corner. We're playing by the DC playbook, which is very different than the Marvel playbook, which I think is actually really smart. I think it was Kelly Young. Every once in a while, he says something accurate. And like I said in the Patreon podcast the other day, Kelly's going to be away for a few weeks, I think. So we got to lob an insult at him at least one time each podcast. We take it one movie at a time. Each movie is its own equation and own creative entity. So, you know, looks like that's what they're going to do. I don't know. Shazam does look fun. So yeah.
That was a philosophical difference that was reflective in when they were writing comic books in the 60s. Because Marvel was doing all of this crossover, shared universe thing, and DC was, yes, the characters coexist, but they all exist in different cities. And they only get together in crossover titles like World's Finest and Justice League and The Brave and the Bold.
Right.
But you could read The Flash and not care about anybody else.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas Marvel, everyone lives in Manhattan. There's no exceptions.
All the superheroes are in one city.
At least in the Silver Age for the most part. The Hulk was out in the Arizona desert or someplace.
Right, but it's comicbook.com. They like to take things out of context and kind of spin it to make it sound more exciting.
Oh, they need click-throughs.
Yeah, so what's really happening is it's not that they're killing the DC. I mean, Aquaman just made $1 billion. Wonder Woman made 800 and I mean, these films are massively successful. They are not, so Marvel's big focus is we're gonna tie in everything together as much as possible so that you have to see all of the movies. You can't watch, if you watch Black Panther, there's several references to Captain America Civil War and to Iron Man and all these other things. And as Rick's pointing out, it's not that DC never mentioned each other, it's just that was never, they liked that idea, because in a world where Superman exists, and especially Silver Age Superman that could literally do anything.
Move planets, the works.
Right. So how do you explain the existence of Batman in a world with Superman, right? Superman would just literally stop all criminals at all times. And my cat's almost, okay, they're behaving. So if, sorry, I just see arms coming out to claw the other one, so.
Yeah, no problem. I have the same problem many times.
So they always kind of wrote things separate. Same with the Flash, right? The Flash can literally run faster than the speed of light. How could crime possibly exist in Keystone or what's the modern Flash city? It's not National City. That's Supergirl.
Central City.
Central City. Thank you. Sorry, there's so many fake cities. It's lose track.
Yeah. Did you read the novel version of Kingdom Come?
No, but I listened to the audio drama several years back.
I don't know if this was in any other editions or not, but when they touch on the Flash, it's like nobody ever sees him in Central City, but he stops literally everything bad. And they did one scene where there's a fire. And then he goes to the fire station. He sees the alarm. He goes and puts out the fire, rescues everybody. This is all in less than a fraction of a second, and puts the fire out. And then he leaves a note for the firefighters. They've gotten the alert, and 1 second later, this note drops on their desk. Late again, guys. So,
and that's exactly it. So it works great if you have Superman in his own book, because Superman's flying around galaxies and doing whatever Superman was doing at those times. And they, as Rick said, they got together in Justice League. And even if you read those old Justice League issues, they got together for a meeting in the beginning, and then they met up at the end. But the middle was like a Super Friends episode where you had one part that was about Batman, and then one part's about Martian Manhunter, and then one part's about, I don't know, one of the more useless superheroes like Aquaman. And then they'd all meet up at the end.
He's no longer useless now. He's the box.
It was in the let's go.
But
that was the running joke.
Yeah, it really helped when John Byrne came along, and I won't carry this to infinity for those who are not interested in DC, but it really helped when John Byrne came along and made Superman a lot less powerful.
And did it in a way that still made him important.
Right.
I mean, we could go on and on about the Man of Steel miniseries. I think it says a lot when DC does their big reboot with New 52 and redoes Superman, and then they undo the reboot, just go back to the John Byrne continuity of the character,
right?
With the wife and kid and everything.
Right.
But with these films, they keep there's rumor after rumor after rumor, because the online atmosphere is Marvel movies good, DC movies bad. So the default expression is let's attack and we'll go from there. So Aquaman gets bad reviews, makes $1 billion, and fans actually enjoy it.
That's all the studios care about. It makes money. So
right.
Continue to have good Aquaman stories, in other words.
And we can look at the Aquaman film. If Superman is in this universe, that's a lot for Superman to miss out on. This Man of Steel Superman is pretty powerful, but they like to be semi-independent to allow these characters to. Is it less realistic? I guess, but it makes it. If you're an Aquaman fan, you don't have to see 12 films to understand Aquaman. You can just go see Aquaman. They make a vague reference to Justice League at the beginning about how he helped that one time. That's all you need.
Yeah.
The Wonder Woman film was that way, with a quick little present situation at the beginning and the end.
Right.
And I think that really is it for DC. I think that's best, because they try to do things backwards.
Yeah, they could even take it a step further and start making Elseworlds movies. actual live action Elseworlds movies.
Which we kind of have with this Joker film coming out, for better or worse.
True.
Even when Marvel had everybody interconnected, there was still some anomalies in that you have all these criminals committing crime waves in New York City, and only one hero seems to be paying attention to them.
Yes, but I know at least for a time in the mid-'60s, they would have like Daredevil would randomly show up when Spider-Man's stopping a criminal, or gosh, I remember, especially with the Punisher, for example, they would, and Kingpin, they would kind of bounce between some of these heroes. So the idea was you were dealing with multiple aspects of the crime. But it makes it hard to believe when you have Spider-Man, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage. I'm probably missing 20 or 30 other, and I mean the Punisher. Punisher, for Christ's sakes, it just kills all of the bad guys.
And the Fantastic Four.
It's
and
just,
the Avengers.
Everyone is in New York City stopping crime. New York should have been insanely safe before Giuliani ever showed up.
Yeah.
Right?
So I saw Halloween the other day, the new Halloween. Did you guys see it? And what did you think?
I own it now. I've not seen it yet.
Oh, okay. So you're pretty sure you're going to like it, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, I was misquoted at one point as saying Halloween was my favorite film. It's not my favorite. It's my favorite of the slasher films. But
who misquoted you? Was it one of the paparazzi that follow you, or?
I'm going to go with Pete Rawlick. Pete Rawlick misquoted me.
Okay.
And then Kelly Young kind of jumped on that because he's mean and he needs reasons to attack people. He could use help, really. But I just enjoy, those are the kind of films where I turn my brain off and just sort of enjoy the kind of jump scares and stuff for what they are. I'm not expecting a masterwork here.
No, but it was good. I liked it. It was good. I mean, it was a nice end. They did it right as an end to the series. You know.
They ended the series?
Well, I really can't say why, but I would think so, yeah. But they basically imply that Halloween 1 and 2 happened and the other Halloween movies didn't. And that Jason's not really her brother. That was just a rumor. I'm not Jason. Getting all my
Michael
mixed up here. Michael Myers was not really her brother. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis's brother. So, but and Jamie Lee Curtis kind of kicked ass in this. It was great. New Ghostbusters movie coming up.
Yeah.
Is this like not any relationship to the sequel or what? I mean, the second sequel?
No, it's
the third film to the original two.
Yeah, it's in the same universe as the first two.
Did they just make it because it was a chance to make money because that other Ghostbuster movie did well, or?
It didn't. It lost money. It lost about $75 million.
Yeah.
So is this gonna be like a new generation of Ghostbusters?
It's kids, actually, I think.
As of right now, it's supposed to be 4 teenagers, two boys and 2 girls, and Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson are signed on for it.
Oh, really?
So the funny thing is, just in the news today, Leslie Jones, who was in the reboot one, and it turned it into a political thing, and it's like, you know, the studio doesn't look at it. This is not about like supporting Trump or any of that stuff. It's, hey, this new one didn't make money, and there's this huge Ghostbusters audience, and nostalgia is alive and well. We just want
that was quite a stretch on her part. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, look, she's an actor, and he loses a job this way, and so I understand her being upset. So, but I do disagree with her kind of her reasoning or explanation for why this is happening. I think it's just
the director of the upcoming Ghostbusters movie is Ivan Reitman's son, and he very respectfully, alluded to the all-female Ghostbusters movie. Said he really respected it, but this is the direction he wanted to go because, when he was a kid, he was on set with Bill Murray and everything, and he just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And that's what this guy wants. He wants to actually Like he wrote a tweet, says, I have the keys to the car, when they gave him the go ahead. You know, he wants to play in that world. You're not in the other world.
And I would argue
that's understandable. I mean, Ghostbusters 2, some people think it's not that great. It made a ton of money.
I had the cereal, I had the video games, I had so many Ghostbusters toys.
And that's what the studios care about. I mean, come on.
Yes.
That's what your publisher cares about too.
If they had made the all-female Ghostbusters team, but it had been a sequel to the original, it would not have gotten the backlash it did. The problem is things have been so politicized because of the recent election that it became this kind of, if you don't support this film, then you don't support women. And that's not, people were just upset that they were rebooting it. Rebooting franchises is something you did in the 90s. Now you do sequels. And we don't care if it, like you just mentioned Halloween. We don't care that Jamie Lee Curtis is almost 70. We want a true Halloween sequel and female. Well, but we want a sequel to the original Halloween, and we don't want a remake. So that's why the Rob Zombie film, the second one, didn't do very good. Again,
that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Jamie Lee Curtis is older, and she's, by all accounts, she's amazing in this film. And she's
a grandmother, and she really kicks ass.
And you didn't hear a single complaint about the way men are treated or any of that stuff. It's not about, this is not that there isn't a diversity problem in film, but this is not the problem here. People want sequels, and so the studios have to make money, so they're going to provide what the people are asking for.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to, really. They could care less about anything else.
I mean, we mentioned Batman. I can't imagine how much money they would, like, in the early 2000s when the Christopher Nolan films were coming out. All people did was trash talk Michael Keaton as Batman, because the Tim Burton films, it's a very late 80s Tim Burton film. But I bet you right now, if they announced that they were doing a Dark Knight Returns adaptation with Michael Keaton as Batman, you'd have $1 billion film.
I saw a headline. Kevin Smith wants Batman Beyond, wants Michael Keaton to be in it.
That'd be, again, I mean, and you would have $1 billion film. I have no question about that.
Yeah.
Would he need like the Bat wheelchair or something?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, he had a cane in the original cartoon.
Yeah. I mean, and Michael Keaton was absolutely fantastic as the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's probably the only good part about that film.
That was actually, he was.
That was
a very believable character.
So I have zero doubt that he could play an old or retired Batman that's mentoring a protege. I have zero doubt. And I think that
I do like the Dark Knight Returns angle better, though, but I guess it's been done to death a little bit, so you go with Batman Beyond.
And they used a lot of the Dark Knight Returns in Batman v Superman.
That's what I mean. So. And there was the 2 animated movies. You know, it's been done.
But I think, I mean, Batman Beyond's perfect because a lot of the people that were fans of the original 1989 film and fans of Batman Beyond, they're all in the 30s right now with lots of money to spend on comic book movies.
Mm-hmm.
And why not?
Oh, by the way, interesting aside. In Ghostbusters 2, the kid that says to Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Hudson, "My dad thinks you're full of crap," is Ivan Reitman's son. So, a little bit of trivia there in case you didn't know.
But I mean, going back to Ghostbusters, I remember when the new film came out, the Angry Video Game Nerd, he's known as a big Ghostbusters fan, and he said he wouldn't review the film because he's tired of reboots. And he was just torn apart in the media as attacking women. And again, it's because this is something so politicized. People took what he said out of context. And he specifically said, well, I'm so tired of reboots. These reboots are so bad all the time. They throw everything out we loved as kids. He doesn't mention the cast at all. It's all about they're taking a beloved franchise and they're rebooting it as a cash grab. And yeah, I mean, I think he's probably right. And
I imagined talking about this on the show today, and I imagined if Kelly Young's here in spirit because we're talking about him a lot today. I imagined if Kelly was here, he would ask. So I did not see the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, and right then Kelly would pipe in, "Why do you hate women, Mike?" But, you know, I didn't see it because Bill Murray wasn't in it, basically. So I wasn't really interested, you know, to your point, Ben. So it wasn't in that universe that I loved. So I had far less interest, and, you know, maybe I'll see it sometime, but it wasn't important to me to see it, you know, and I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, it is. And I want to be clear. I love the cast itself. The 4 women they picked as the Ghostbusters, they're all amazing actors. I love their work.
And they did inspire a lot of girls. I saw a lot of little girls, you know, that year dressed as Ghostbusters for Halloween. You know, they were in the news and everything, and that's wonderful.
I agree. I think a lot of the old, I mean, I felt the same way. There's no connection to the original. I'm less interested in seeing it. I watched it later on Netflix. It's okay. It's not as well written as the original, and that hurts it too. But I mean, it's just one of those issues that I think things have gotten so politicized. I mean,
it's really easy to offend somebody these days, I guess.
It is. I mean, I look at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is one of my 2 favorite superhero films of all time now.
Great film, and I think Wonder Woman 1984 looks good too so far.
It does, and that's a female director, a female lead. They handled everything perfectly. I think Wonder Woman should be. I mean, this is why I think the DCU is still going, is because Wonder Woman was successful. I don't see a.
Oh my God! Kelly just wrote. Kelly's watching.
I gotta say, I like
Wonder Woman. Why do you hate women, Mike? Sorry,
we've got to point out the 2 flaws in Wonder Woman.
There's more than 2 flaws, Rick.
No,
they're 2 very obvious flaws.
We got a lot of topics, so let's do this fast.
Just quickly. They messed up a lot of World War I history, if you know World War I. And I know, you know, Hydra wasn't in World War II in Marvel, but we didn't have as contradictory as it was in Wonder Woman.
And Paradise Island moved around. That's what you're going to say.
Yeah, you say Paradise Island moved around.
Well, no,
it went from the Mediterranean to the North Sea.
It's a magical island.
The Germans weren't stupid. Why would all the machine guns be pointed right at her shield, right in front of her when she's sitting there, when they're flanking her? Come on. Never mind.
All right. Speaking of Lovecraft, since that name appears somewhere in the title of this podcast.
Who?
Necronomicon Providence tickets for 2019, they go on sale on the 25th. So if you're interested in that, it really, really is fun if you're interested in going to that in Providence, Rhode Island, of course. And
do I need to be sitting by the computer when, like, how quick do these sell out?
No, if you want, there's like a certain number of gold key awards. If you get a gold key award or a gold key ticket, you get to be in the course at the prayer breakfast and you get certain perks. If you get a silver key, you have some less perks. And there's 75 of the silver keys.
And you get to go on the gates.
Right. But they're more expensive. But there's about 1,200 tickets to the event. And to be honest, they're available for months. So while we do like people to buy their tickets so that the organizers know that there's going to be a success.
You're making me dizzy.
It's really the gold key and silver key that sell out quickly, like within hours.
Yeah, actually, thanks, Matt. That's a really important thing to note. If you are interested in those 2 things, yes, do sit by your computer. If you just want a regular guest pass, no. If you miss it on the 25th, it'll still be there on the 26th. The website is necronomicon-providence.com. If you spell that incorrectly or anything, just Google Necronomicon Providence 2019. You'll come to it. There, if you go to the website now, there is no buy tickets page. I'm assuming that will pop up on the 25th. So, you know, and I'm hoping, and we usually do get to do this, is that the founder and the guy that works his ass off, as many people do, but buck stops with him and organizes all this, is Niels Hobbs. And usually we have him on the show, you know, a month or 2 ahead of the event, and he can talk about, you know, what's going to happen there and who's going to be there and so on and so forth. So I did want to mention that. Thanks to whoever put that on the message board. I think it was Thomas Rowley.
Yes,
that. Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
make me aware of that.
This will be my first year going, so I'm pretty interested.
It's great. It really is.
Just so you know, Ben, most people go to Swan Point Cemetery and they sit there the whole 4 days.
That's right.
So
and
if you just meet us there. Just keep waiting. We'll be there. Promise.
There will be Lovecraftians there, but I won't be one of them at the grave if I'm there this year. Suspiria. Anyone see that? The new one? Okay, then. I'll take that as a no. Saw it just a bit ago, and I liked it. Now, this is not a movie. This is not a movie to watch if you're in a hurry for things to happen, but I did like it a lot. So I guess that's really all I can say without giving things away. The director, I forget his name, of the 1977 Suspiria, doesn't like it at all. But
Dario D'Argento.
Thank you, Rick. Did not like it at all, but most people did, according to the reviews. It's got 4-star reviews on Amazon, and, you know, as Kelly Young would say, Mike Davis likes it, so it must be good. At least I assume that's what he would say if he were here. If we'll speak for him since he's not. All right. So anyway, I do recommend that. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. Okay. Philip's not here to tell me to shut up about science stuff, so I can talk about this. Here's a headline. And it's a couple months old, but that doesn't matter. It's on QZ.com, which I don't know what that is. But Stephen Hawking, the headline is Stephen Hawking left us bold predictions on AI, superhumans, and aliens. Now, this was one of the smartest human beings on Earth. Here's what he has to say about artificial intelligence. The advent of superintelligent AI. This is sort of Lovecraftian to me, if you listen to what he says here. In short, the advent of superintelligent AI would either be the best or the worst thing to ever happen to humanity. The real risk with AI isn't malice, but competence. A superintelligent AI will be extremely good at accomplishing its goals. And if those goals are not aligned with ours, we're in trouble. You are probably not an evil ant hater who steps on ants out of malice. But if you're in charge of a hydroelectric green energy project and there's an anthill in the region to be flooded, too bad for the ants. Let's not place humanity in the position of those ants. I will now pause for comments.
Well, I mean, you got to be careful about how much are you going to extrapolate to what AI really means.
Self-awareness, probably.
Well, but
that's starting.
Like right now, like there's a lot of experimentation with AI for medical fields. Like, for example, pathologists have to read a slide and recognize these abnormal cells, which means they're looking for patterns. And this is something that falls very good into the purview of a computer. So they're creating programs that can look at many slides very quickly and identify regions of interest where there may be an abnormality. But it's more like a tool to the pathologist because AI is not good at insight. Do you see what I mean? It's like
but not yet is the key.
Yeah,
if ever, you're right. It is debatable, definitely.
Right now, it's so when people say, "Well, a computer beat the world's greatest chess player," or "A computer won at Go," you know, the fastest human ever on the planet has been Usain Bolt by a long shot. Okay, if I'm in my car, I bet I beat him in a race every time because I've got a better tool. So right now, what you have are things that are basically tools. So the whole doomsday scenario, super intelligent AI like Ex Machina, I don't think that's even close to the horizon yet. I think, like,
I don't really. I think you may be right, but I just think it's somewhere down the line if we don't destroy ourselves.
Well, I'd agree with Matt on this. So he mentioned chess, for example. Obviously, computers have been better at chess since the late 90s.
Shit,
Your
since
cell
the
phone.
80s when I was playing on my.
Yeah.
All it was this chess set, and the chess set would tell me where to move its side of the. It was physical pieces.
Yeah. And well, right now, your cell phone could crush the world champion, and he's the greatest chess player of all time, as best we can tell.
Right.
But chess players now, computers are not something they play against. It's a tool to help them find things in a game, and that's what. Sorry, my cat is going crazy over there. That's kind of how doctors are supposed to use tools like this. Alpha Zero, the way it learned chess was completely different than how other engines did it. It looked for patterns in games. It played itself. Still not. I mean, it's funny because I see it a lot in chess communities where they talk about Alpha Zero or the open source version, Leela Zero. They give it like they're like, oh, she plays so well, and it's like, no, she doesn't actually exist. It's a computer program following operations. There's no actual intelligence involved yet.
To me, more important than the issue of AI in terms of humanity is in the next, I don't know, few decades, probably about 40% of current jobs are going to be displaced by automation or improvements in technology. And there's really no thought being given on any form of policy or international approach, national approach to what are you going to do with this population of people who are going to be unable to find work because most of their jobs have been displaced. I mean, how many people are working as travel agents now? So to me, that's a bigger societal problem than the possibility of a super genius AI. It's like having a policy in place that will address upcoming employment displacement. Well, you see how well the government's working now. So I got real hope for the future and saying, well, you know, I'll be dead in about 10
I do think
years.
it's important, but it's fun to think about AI, and you know, it is debatable whether AI is even possible. You know, there's the Turing test and all that, ways to tell maybe, you know, that something or someone is self-aware. But you know, it's interesting from the Lovecraftian angle too. If it does develop, and maybe not out of malice, but because they have different goals, they crush half the planet. And when I guess the bottom line is when one of the world's smartest men leaves us with some comments, it's probably wise to at least listen and mull it over.
Certainly. But you think the world's smartest man, and what does this mean? Okay, it means he is a very expert thinker in theoretical physics, and it doesn't necessarily mean he knew shit from Shinola about anything else. I'm just thinking about the recent incidents with James Watson. You know, just because someone is the person who helped describe the structure of DNA with Watson and Crick, the Watson and Crick model.
Oh, right. Felix,
yeah. Who turns out to be kind of a flaming racist. It's like, okay, I don't, just let's be careful.
Yeah, but no, these are closer to his actual field, though. It's not. All right.
Okay, so I'm
like, does God exist? No. The biggest threats to Earth.
Lex Luthor.
Yes, that's number one.
We already have him.
Yeah.
Under an alias.
Asteroid collision, he says, but we have no defense against that right now. More immediately, most importantly, climate change. And of course, we're not doing much about that. So now that I've depressed everyone, we can move on to a new topic.
Well, I mean, you asked us to talk about cosmic horror.
That's right. And damn it, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's like I have some hope in that regard with the
I think we're all going to die.
Yeah, well, that's true. Eventually.
You could almost justify Cthulhu in that he was here first on the planet. We've taken it over and have totally ruined it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Matt, do you have anything else?
Well, with the improvements in battery technology and solar power chips, I actually have hope for the future that we're going to be able to move away from carbon-based energy, because, you know, everyone talks about the Chinese and their long-term economic plans, like buying up port and mineral rights in Africa, etc., positioning themselves to be in the right position for these high-tech industries in the future. In the meantime, their country is choking in a poisonous fume.
Yeah.
And one would have to think that that they are not disinterested in greener technology.
Yeah.
I think there's actually the improvements in battery and solar tech have been very, very striking over the last decade. And so I have a considerable amount of hope that things are going to happen that will change what this whole doomsday scenario. I mean, I don't know.
I have 2 items here that I think will make Rick Lay very happy, although knowing Rick, he probably already knows about them. Tom Baker's final Doctor Who story coming to theaters in March.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh my God. Somebody write this down. Note the time and date. I know Rick doesn't. Yeah, Google that. There's a few articles on it.
Is this an original production or?
No, it's his actual last story. I forget the name of it. From
the original Doctor Who show.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't know why they're doing this, but they're doing it, and that sounds pretty cool. If you're a Doctor Who fan.
Logopolis, I think it was called, was the last one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay, so item number 2. Let me open this up here. This is from Bloody Disgusting. That's a website name. Documentary Master of Dark Shadows will dig deep into the classic Dark Shadows series, TV series. Documentary coming up.
Great.
Wait a second. You didn't know about this either?
They've killed all the Dark Shadow websites that I used to go to.
Oh, okay.
That's
the important thing is I knew about this.
I used to get everything from Dark Shadows Journal.
Okay.
And that's been moribund for years. So I only go to Big Finish now to see what audio dramas come out.
I don't think there's a lot of Dark Shadows. Well, maybe there is. I shouldn't say that. We've learned today that MPI Media Group has just wrapped production on a documentary titled Master of Dark Shadows. Let me see if I can. Release will be released this coming spring. So I guess you don't have long to wait on that, Rick.
It's probably going to be about Dan Curtis, who made this series.
Okay. Speaking of death and everything, Star Trek 4 is dead. You guys probably knew that too. They can't come together about money, and
Star Trek 4, you mean the Chris Pine film series?
Yeah, that one.
You also had the issue that we were talking about was Ghostbusters. I wasn't enthused that they did a kind of reboot.
That's true. I enjoyed the reboots, but I did not enjoy Star Trek Beyond very much, and it did not make money. You know?
I didn't mind the reboot because they threw in the line about how it's an alternate timeline now. So I was like, oh, well, it doesn't count as a real reboot. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're not. Certainly, the second one, Into Darkness, was not good. I just find it surprising because Star Trek is seeing a renaissance on television now. Discovery I enjoyed it quite a bit. I know some people didn't, but we're getting a new Patrick Stewart series. The Star Trek shorts are very successful.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic. Yeah.
Did you see the premiere episode for the second season of Discovery?
I have not yet. I've been so busy with work and school. I'm behind on that and True Detective and Supernatural, and yeah,
I'm vexed because you have to buy that extra service from CBS, and I refuse.
Yeah, but they're doing it very well because we're getting Captain Pike now.
Okay, well, since Ben mentioned True Detective, we can talk about that. Rick pointed out recently that you can see the forests of Ling in one screenshot. That's in the missing kid's house, right?
Yeah, and it's in an advanced Dungeon of it's a fictional advanced Dungeon of Dragons module. So if that is not just a throwaway item, we may have kids playing games that have ominous hints.
Well, as I said before the show, I hope it's. I don't want to say anything in case someone listening hasn't seen season 1, but I'll just say this: I hope it's a clue and not a red herring, and leave it at that.
Well, we do have the. I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen it yet, but
It is good. It is good. It's good.
At the murder scene, there were certain things found.
Yes.
Which I'm wondering what the implications are, which obviously have some cult-like
certain short story that we can't mention because then people would know.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that am I wrong that like they're hinting around this is going to be something like the Memphis 3? There were 3 teenagers in Memphis, I guess, who were convicted of killing 3 boys in a satanic ritual. Because they have those 3 teenagers on the periphery of the show, but then those convictions were essentially overturned many years later.
Yeah, it looks like they're going that route. Because we know about something that happened was this murder case which some people are upset about.
Well, we spoke earlier, just touched on separating the art from the artist. I'll say this: I'm really enjoying season 3 of True Detective, and if I'm saying it, it's good. That's just a little inside joke. What else we got?
Well, were you alluding to a Stephen King short story before?
No, I'm blanking on the author's name, but the title is Something You Find in a Tree. I'll tell you after we.
Right, because I see a possible Stephen King connection.
Oh, okay. Penny Dreadful City of Angels. Did you hear anything about this?
No, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
It's if I remember correctly, none of the original cast is in it. It's like a completely new story.
It's like a True Detective thing. Well, not exactly, but something like that.
That's coming to Showtime?
Showtime, yes. Well, Showtime, I think. I think I read that. Here's the quote on the movie. A spiritual descendant of the story set in Victorian era London. The next chapter employs a new vision, new characters, and storylines. It opens in 1938 Los Angeles, a time and place deeply infused with Mexican-American folklore and social tension. Rooted in the conflict between characters connected to the deity Santa Muerte. Is that how you say that, Rick? Muerte?
Yeah, that was she actually appeared in True Detective season 2.
And others allied with the devil. So, I don't know. I think John Logan, yeah, he's the series creator and he's doing this too. So, as much as you can know at this point, it's probably going to be good if he's involved.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the original 3 seasons, so I'll definitely check it out.
I wonder if we're going to go into this half brother or devil's brother angle, where Dracula was his brother. Satan and Dracula were brothers.
For anyone who cares, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, the Sam and Dean's father, is returning for the season's 300th episode. Oh my God. 300th episode. Wow.
I'm still behind, but it's I don't know. I still like the show. It's still good.
It's a fun show. I'm saying this tongue in cheek because I do follow the show. I mean, Kelly and I have talked about this in a Patreon podcast. Here we have a show about basically a couple of idiots who travel the country. They do save people, but they also create situations that kill a lot of people, and they have to fix the problems that they started. You know, so that said, I like the show and it's fun. So yeah, their dad will be back for the 300th episode. My son says that it's a show for teenage girls, and I probably shouldn't be watching.
Is their mom still?
Yeah, she's a recurring guest.
I mean, she's still. She had died and she had gotten brought back, so she's still around.
Yeah, she's
in her second incarnation.
Yeah, not in every episode, but yeah, she's been in several episodes this season. Right. We talked about Wonder Woman 1984, didn't we? Chris Pine's going to be back for that, so I don't know how that's going to happen.
Might be,
yeah,
could be a relative.
Or I'm hoping dream sequence or flashback. I do not want them, like, his death was perfect, and I'm sorry if I spoiled a 2-year-old movie for anybody that you should have already seen 3 or 4 times by now. It was very purposeful and important, and that importance carried over into Justice League. So I think undoing it in the mid-'80s, that'd be really odd. Just saying.
Yeah, and I just found out how. And you're not going to like it. The source, so this not 100%, says that Chris Pine's Steve Trevor is in fact resurrected by famed, I thought it would be infamous, DC villain Maxwell Lord, who will be played by Pedro Pascal, who I guess is in Game of Thrones and The Mandalorian, neither of which I've really seen.
This is the kind of thing I'd really need to see, because it's these kind of rumors are, you know, resurrected could be like he's a robot or he's like a possessed thing. I mean, who knows, right? Like, it's so hard to say from this perspective. I can't imagine they would go through the trouble to bring him back as the character as he was.
Maxwell Lord is sort of a Lex Luthor type, right?
Well, he's got telepathic powers too. I've never heard of him having powers to resurrect someone in the comics.
Yeah, and in the comics, I mostly remember him during the Justice League International stuff where he was funding the team. I know they made him Jeff Johns made him a bad guy in
the prequel to Infinite Crisis, and then which led into Infinite Crisis.
Yeah,
which is my favorite Crisis, by the way.
He was in the first season of Supergirl.
Oh, was he?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he was See, I was thinking he was going to be resurrected by Felix Faust.
Yeah. Well, that's the rumor right now. Not to get off on a tangent, and I know that Crisis on Infinite Earths has a lot of nostalgia value, and I really, really do like it. But and then you have Infinite Crisis, and then you have Final Crisis. Of the three, Infinite Crisis is the one I keep going back to. I don't know about you guys, but
yeah, the thing I liked about Infinite Crisis, and I feel the same way. In many ways, the original Crisis on Infinity Earths, there was a lot of good in with the bad, and I think Infinite Crisis did a great job of taking the things people loved about the DC universe of the early 1980s and bringing it back, but not throwing away the DC universe that the modern fans had grown up with, and kind of integrating them together. And I think that's what DC realized they needed to do, and why they started Rebirth. Because they realized that, wow, people don't really like this new Superman, and this whole Lois Lane reveals his identity and we keep depowering him and nothing makes any sense. And people really missed the Superman that was married and established. And so they bring him back and they make him the current Superman, and people love that. And I think Infinite Crisis did it first, and just did it in such a great, well-told way.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not the biggest Jeff Johns fan in the world,
same here.
certain things correct. He did the same thing with Green Lantern Rebirth, which came out I was still in the military, I think in like 2003. And he knew that there were Kyle Rayner fans. For those who don't know, Green Lantern, in the early 90s, DC was suffering, and so they tried to replace all their heroes with new, younger versions. So Superman had the death of Superman, and they bring back a bunch of trial ones. Batman had his back broken, and they replaced him with Azrael, who's like a darker version of Batman.
People love that storyline. I've read it once, and I never returned to it. I hate it.
No, it doesn't hold up well. With Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, his home city is destroyed. It's actually part of the Death of Superman storyline.
Doomsday wiped it out.
I think it was actually Mongol.
Oh, okay.
But somebody, it was part of that storyline. I think it was Cyborg Superman was related to it. And so Coast City's wiped out. So he goes crazy, and he decides to attack the Green Lantern Corps to take all of their power so he can resurrect the city. And he becomes a villain called Parallax, and he kills off the Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah.
And
Jeff Johns is a great writer. Really a really great writer. The problem I have personally with Jeff Johns is he fixes stuff that he broke, and everybody treats him like a hero for fixing it in the first place, and no one remembers he's the one who broke it.
In this case, he didn't break it.
I don't mean in that case. I'm talking about Superman in the new 50s.
Yes. Well, that's definitely is something he broke and had to fix. And Green Lantern, I think, is what got him the role of kind of being in these positions, because the new fans that were fans of the new Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, the fans of the John Stewart Green Lantern from the cartoons, and he brought them all together and made them all heroes in Green Lantern Rebirth, so that you got them all back and in a way that everyone was happy. The problem is, ever since then, he's messed it up every single time he's done it.
By the way, for you comic fans out there, Marvel included, by the way, Ben, you probably know this, but Infinite Crisis is available as an audio drama as well.
But awesome. Get it now, because Graphic Audio is losing the rights to all those DC works.
Yeah, I was going to write them and ask them why their shows are disappearing from the pages.
Yeah, so I would get it now. They've already lost some of them. I'd have to go look in which ones, but like, for example, I bought.
Are you saying I won't be able to stream them at some point?
If you already bought them, they're still part of your account.
Okay.
But if you haven't purchased them yet, they'll disappear for you. So one I have, it's the Enemies and Allies. It was Superman and Batman. It was.
I got that one. Yeah.
And I really actually enjoyed that one better than the novel.
Yeah.
I recommended it to someone. They're like, "Oh, I can't find it on the site," and it's gone.
It's gone, and I can still stream it. Okay, that answers that question. It's no surprise to anybody who's listened to the show for a long time that I like audio drama. And yeah, Graphic Audio did some, really great audio dramas of some comic book storylines. Infinite Crisis being one of my favorites. The Superman Justice League, Batman Justice League when Stone King is really good. So on and so forth.
Those two were gone, by the way. I had to buy the CDs used because I didn't buy them on the site at the time.
Well, that's another thing. If you are interested, look on Amazon for used copies, I guess, or eBay. Yeah. Well, I could get into a whole thing about who was right, Wonder Woman or Superman and Batman, but we can save that for another time with what Wonder Woman did. I'm on Wonder Woman's side, by the way. And I think that's just about all I got. The rest of the stuff we can talk about next time. You guys got anything else?
Just a comment I'm throwing out there, and I don't know how much it applies in the days of print on demand, but if there's a limited edition of a book of like our movie, or like 100, 150 copies, and you're at all interested, you're really probably well advised to just fork over the money and pick it up, because on the secondary market now, there are these bots or programs, or I don't know what it is, that like survey what's selling all across the internet, and it sets the price of what's being offered accordingly, so that scarce copies suddenly go for preposterous amounts of money. My example lately is there's a book by a guy named Roy Emerson called The Riddle of Cthulhu. It's from, I don't know, 2002 or 3, or it's dreadful. It's one of the worst pieces of dross I ever wrote.
It's very, very wrote or read. Sorry, was
Red.
that?
He meant red.
It's very, very bad. This book.
It's terrible. It's dog crap on a page. And I had got a copy back when I
didn't like it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I saw a used copy on eBay selling for $275.
Well, you saw it listed for, but yeah, your point is well made. Yeah.
It's like, so
pick them up when they're new. You're going to pay less for them.
This POD stuff that's available forever on Lulu or CreateSpace, I don't know how that's going to affect anything. But so my point is, what Ben's saying is, if this is something that really interests you and you have the money, you might as well pick it up now, because you don't know if it goes out of print, as it were, those used copies could suddenly become very expensive.
That's a good point, Matt. Thanks. Well, I was concerned that I didn't have enough stuff to talk about in the second hour, and I've got like 9 or 10 things still left to talk about, and we can talk about those next time. Because we're closing in on 2 hours here. Let's see, next week. Yeah, it's still TBA. I've got the folks from Pseudopod, great fiction podcast. They've been around for just years and years. They're going to come on the show sometime soon. And I floated a couple dates out to them. January 27th is one of them. We'll see, but they're definitely going to be on the show. We just got to nail down the details. And then February 3rd, that's Super Bowl, right, guys? People who watch football? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm assuming you guys do watch football, or do you? I don't think you do, Rick, do you? No, I didn't think so.
Well, I have it on. You know, it's like before I started taking an online course, putting football on was my favorite way to fall asleep on the couch. And now my course lectures are.
Can you send me a few then?
Right. Anyway. Besides, we're all going to be recovering from the Groundhog Day festivities from the day before.
We are? What are you doing? I'm not doing anything.
But you're doing it over again.
That's true. Well, that's a sort of we'll decide then if we're going to do a show that day or not. And then February the 10th, Richard Chismar. So got some good guests coming up. Thanks everyone for listening. I really appreciate it. Thanks to you guys for coming on today. And we will see everybody next week.